Satan hindered us. I want you to let that sink in for just a moment. Paul wanted to see them. He says somebody held him back. Satan hindered us. It wasn't that Paul had a mind to do something and it was just kind of an inconvenience to him, or he decided, no, I'll get to that later, I'll change my plans. Somebody from the outside interfered with him beyond his control. He can't control Satan, and he said Satan hindered us. Now we'll come back to that idea in just a moment, and I did not wire myself for sound. Don't tell them where I went with that. I'll be back up there in just a moment. I'll try to speak up. I'm going to need a little help to illustrate this, though. Roland, come on up here for just a moment. All right. Get that down there. There you go. Yeah, this, here, let me loosen it up. That's good right there. You got to do this. Okay, he's going to help me illustrate this tonight, this idea of a hindrance, okay? And when he helps illustrate this idea of a hindrance, then it's going to give you the idea for what it means for something to hold you back. Here we got a good little rescue knot tied, all good and ready to go. And what I want you to do, your job is you just stay there, okay? And you keep the rope just like it is. It don't need to go anywhere. The rope needs to stay right there too, all right? Just hold on to it. Okay, so he's going to help me illustrate the idea of a hindrance. Let's say that I decided I wanted to go over here, all right? Then I'm not supposed to be able to. You just stay right there. You got it this time, right? Okay, you got it. So let's say that I decided I need to go over there and visit somebody. So I start going over there. No, you're supposed to stay right there. You got it this time, right? Okay. Now, all I'm saying is that though somebody over here wants to see me, and so if I go, he's doing the best he can. Hey, that's no fair. That's a limit. All right. Here's the thing about it. He's doing good. And he may grow up to be the biggest He-Man the world has ever seen, right? But right now, there's a little problem that he has of weight ratio and muscle build, right? So there's a little bit of an issue there. Now, you did fine, but we're done with you for now. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah. All right. Cliff, come here. Oh, no, I got you. Now, yeah, hold the rope. All right. And so I'm over here, and I decide that I want to go see somebody, okay? And I want to see where maybe Jonathan's around here. All I want to do is go over there, okay? And I want to see him, right? Oh, come on, man. Now, we've got an issue. I could lean into that all day long, all I want to. And it'd be a funny little show that we could put on, but basically, he's not going anywhere, is he? Here's an outside force, and this can actually be a hindrance to me. A lot of people think that they're bothered in life by something, but if they have their mind made up, it may be a drag on them, but it's not a real hindrance. You're a hindrance, you know what I'm saying? Now, the hindrance aspect of this means that, man, he's been making my bowling knot time. The hindrance thing means that you've got to identify what's holding you back in life. The basic idea or definition of a hindrance is a hold back, something that's preventing you from progressing where you would want to go. Let's talk about that for just a moment. There's another good illustration of this in the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 24, verse 56. Genesis 24:56. In this place in the Bible, it says that there was a servant of Abraham. He has gone off to find an appropriate mate for the son, and so he finds her, and then he tells the people, he said to them, "Don't hinder me. The Lord has prospered my way." In other words, I was on a mission to find a wife for my master's son. I have found what I was looking for. Don't hold me back. The Lord has a mission for me, and I've got to go and do what God wants me to do. Don't hinder me. What he is saying here is that you're an outside force, and I cannot force you to make up the mind that I want you to have, that you're going to let the daughter go and let me bring her back so that she can be a part of Abraham's family. I can't make you do that. You are a hindrance to me if you're going to prevent me from this. Don't hinder me. God has prospered my way. He's going to bless me here if I go and just proceed and fulfill my mission. Don't hold me back. So he says, send me away that I may go to my master. A hindrance means that it is something that needs to be gotten rid of, but in the way we're using it tonight, it's something where you're going to need some help to get rid of the problem. You've got a hindrance that comes from Satan, perhaps. Now let's go back to that passage in 1 Thessalonians 2 and verse 18. Some things are outside of your control, and you need God's help for that. Let me paint you a scenario, okay? We have an active prison ministry. A man is in prison. Now, we have one of those portable baptistries here that you can bring and fill up and baptize a person. When I was with Mount Gilead in Monroe County Jail, we didn't have that. And if somebody wanted to be baptized, they gave permission for them to be released into the deputy's car, and they took him over to the church building and you baptized him. Maybe even in chains. But chains can't keep the soul chained, can they? You know, it was fine. So you baptized him. And there's a little problem. Let's say that a man is in jail for trying to escape. And then he says, I want to be baptized. Exactly how do you think you're going to convince the jailer to let that man out of jail for a little while to baptize him? That's going to be a hard thing, isn't it? If he was there for that reason, he's going to be probably isolated, locked down, and everything else. And the decision as to whether he's going to be baptized is out of your hands. I can't do anything about that. The church would have to go into prayer, wouldn't they? Lord, please open up a way for this man to become a Christian, for him to get baptized. Because he wants to be converted. His aim is to serve God. He knows what he's been commanded to do. He's already repented. He's wanting to do what's right. But he's got this hindrance. He's got something holding him back. His own history and people who have power outside of his control. He needs some help. And so you would have to pray to God that the barrier that's holding him back is taken out of the way. Many, many people do not know what a hindrance is. They believe that they are being stopped from obeying God when they don't have that same kind of barrier. They just got a little drag. They've got maybe an emotional problem. They've got something that is maybe an educational problem, but it's not a real hindrance. The hindrance, like the Bible is talking about here, is that outside influence that maybe only God can get rid of or work out so that it's taken care of. Let's go back to 1 Thessalonians 2:18 here. We wanted to come to you, even I, Paul, time and again, but Satan hindered us. Satan hindered you, Paul? Yeah. He knew that Satan was behind it. I don't know exactly what it was. Maybe it was that he tried to get a boat, to go from one place to another. And he knew that there's a reason why this man all of a sudden jacked up the price, and I don't have that money to get on the boat. It could have been different things, but Paul knew Satan's behind this. There's a reason why that guy turned obstinate on me all of a sudden. There's a reason why I can't go from point A to point B. Satan doesn't want me over there. God wants me over there to convert souls, and he don't want me there. Satan has hindered us. And he gave that as a good excuse to the Thessalonians. He said, I wanted to come, but Satan held me back. Everybody needs to identify whether they have a real and true hindrance that keeps them from doing what they believe and they know would be good for them to do in life. If you right now are considering a ministry in the church, you're thinking of doing something new, you're thinking of influencing somebody else for Jesus, you're thinking of taking on a different work, and you are saying, I am going to ask for that work list to be given to me, and I'm going to check off on a new thing. Why can you not do that? As a Christian, you can't do that, perhaps for the same reason as Paul is. Because something on the outside is hindering you. Maybe your boss is demanding something from you that is too much of a burden on your time. Maybe it is that your family situation is such that an emergency has cropped up. Now, Satan can intrude and cause some bad things, but what you have to do in those situations is you've got to pray to the Lord, my friends. You've got to pray hard that the hindrance be taken out of the way. And if it is taken out of the way, then thanks be unto God. If it is not, you have to have the same kind of attitude that the Apostle Paul did. Remember, he had a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to buffet him. He prayed 3 times to God, take it out of the way. I don't want it. God said, my grace is sufficient unto thee. My strength is made, perfect in weakness, in the problems that you have. That's how you're going to improve. I'm not going to take that away. It's just one of those things you have to deal with. And sometimes when we have that in our life, a hindrance, what we believe is holding us back, it gets so frustrating for people. Have you ever noticed that some, if they can't do what they had a dream of doing in the church, they get all mad about it and everything, and eventually they'll end up just quitting the church? As a Sunday evening crowd, I want to beg of you tonight, if you are being hindered from doing something in the church, something new, something better, something different, find a different pathway or pray harder about what it is that's hindering you. And even if you've prayed as hard as you can and the hindrance is still there, find a way to serve God, because there is no excuse for allowing a hindrance to keep you from being faithful. The Apostle Paul to the Thessalonians, he still loved them even though he couldn't come to see them. The Apostle Paul to the Thessalonians, he was still an apostle and still stayed faithful to God even though Satan was hindering him, even though Satan gave him a messenger to buffet him in the flesh, even though he did not get to fulfill all of his plans. He knew that whatever he did would ultimately fulfill God's plans, because God is greater and God is more powerful than Satan, and he was satisfied. Let your life be the same kind of thing where you say, Lord, I'm frustrated. There are barriers in front of me. There are things holding me back, and I can't do anything about them. I can't change some of those things. They're outside of my control. How do you know but that God is saying from heaven, my strength is made perfect in that weakness? If I was to take that away from you, you'd get the big head. If I was to take that away from you, then you wouldn't fulfill some other work that you haven't found yet. If I were to take away that barrier, that hindrance from you, then your future would not be as bright as it can be with that in place. Satan means it for your bad, but I mean it for your good. You can turn anything into a good situation. And I mean anything. Let's go to another illustration. I want to show you this by several illustrations. Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8. This is the situation where Jesus is talking to Peter. And in this situation, Jesus is beginning to describe to them how that He's going to have to die and leave them. He's going to be crucified. In Mark 8, verse 31, He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things. He's got to be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and scribes. He's going to be killed, and after 3 days, He's going to rise again. Can you imagine how disturbing that was to the disciples? You're going to leave us? They're going to kill you? It seems that they let the rise again part just kind of brush over them because they're probably in shock. Well, you can't do that. And that's the attitude Peter had. You can't do that. He spoke this word openly, and then Peter took him aside, and Peter begins to rebuke Jesus. Oh, Peter, you know he's in trouble, don't you? You don't rebuke Jesus. This is His mission. Jesus recognizes what the problem is. Peter is an unwitting tool of Satan. Peter is trying to hold Jesus back, but Jesus will not allow him to be a hindrance. When He had turned around, He looked at His disciples, and He rebuked Peter. He's doing this openly. You see, it says He turned around and He looked at His disciples, and then He rebukes Peter, and He said, "Get behind me, Satan. You're not mindful of the things of God, but of the things of men." I'm not going to have it. People get addicted to things, their hobbies. They don't set aside the time that it takes to become anything than they ever have been in religion. Life involves change, folks. Life is a challenge. You have to be open to the change. It's a scary thing. Somebody asked me not too long ago, I guess I'm feeling kind of reminiscent today. They asked me about coming here to Willette, about my comfort level. And I admitted to them, I said, that's what I miss the most, is that I'd gotten myself into a routine over at Mount Gilead, which was the problem. And I felt comfortable with what I was doing. And I knew that couldn't be good. And so then I come here and I never have yet quite felt comfortable, you might say. That's just something that takes a little bit of time. But I don't know that it's altogether good to get to where you feel comfortable. We need to have that challenge, and then we need to rise to the challenge and face it. Peter is saying here, well, you can't do that. Jesus, you can't have this kind of thing happen. Don't be saying things like that. Well, you're not going to act like that with me, Peter. My mission is to do that. I will die for you, and I will rise again the third day. You get behind me, Satan. How do you think Peter felt to be called that? He's an unwitting tool of Satan. Whenever you influence somebody not to be a Christian, you're an unwitting tool of Satan. Whenever you had a weakness that pulled them away from Jesus because of your bad example, you're an unwitting tool of Satan. Whenever it is that you yourself have decided not to stand up for what you know your mission is from God, to be faithful, to be good, and you're going to go along with the crowd, then you're not fulfilling the image of Jesus Christ, who stood up to Peter and said, we're not going to have it. It's not going to go down that way. Peter could not become a hindrance to Jesus. Now there's a lesson to be learned in that. Jesus was able to identify what was going to be trouble. A person graduates high school. You're going to go out into the big world. And you got a lot of different choices to make. You got choices to make about who you're going to marry. You got choices to make about what you're going to do for a living. You got choices to make about how you're going to spend the money you're going to be making, right? Because you're not used to that kind of having actual money on hand, real money, as in the amount that could get you into trouble. You have to make up your mind. If I make this person as a friend, if I take on this job, if I marry this person, where is that liable to pull me in life? Is it liable to pull me in a good direction or a bad direction? Now, those are serious considerations. Are you putting up your own barrier, your own hindrance? And once you've got that hindrance erected, then it's out of your control, isn't it? You've set it up. Jesus knew how to identify a problem. And He said, you're not going to become one. It's not going down like that, Peter. Get behind me, Satan. I'm not putting up with that temptation. I will fulfill my mission. And you're not going to get to where Satan has, worked you over like that. Thanks be to God that Peter had a great attitude, right? He was able to take a rebuke and then improve his life. And so therefore he left Jesus alone after that, and Satan was not able to work through him. What did you expect in that case or in your life? Do you expect Satan to appear before you and introduce himself with a red suit on and a tail and a pitchfork and say, hey, I'm here to hinder you. I'm here to bug you and to persecute you. Satan doesn't work that way. Satan works through the pleasures of sin. Well, this is exciting. This is fun. This is new. Well, I could do this instead of spend time with the family. I could do this instead of going to church. I could do this instead of helping that person. But when you lay down at night, then you're going to know that I could have done so much more in the eyes of God, and that my life here was not about the pleasures of sin for a season. It was about me being able to feel good, about knowing that I have done what I could today to be a good person, to be a good example of Jesus, and to worship my God as best I knew how. God doesn't demand too much of us. You're doing what you can to worship God right now on the Lord's Day. That's great. Thank you. But how much thanks is due to the servant who does what he knows he's supposed to do to start with, right? The thanks is being unto God, because He has supplied us an opportunity to serve Him. When you go out there, you're to be an example before those that you work around, to not let them pull you, you're pulling them. And you are going to be somebody who's looking out, making sure that you do not allow that barrier, that hindrance to get in your life. I don't know what it is in your life because I don't know what it is that tempts you. But whatever it is that Satan is trying to do to you, he works through his children, he works through his servants, people on the earth, influences of bad ideas, false doctrines that make life a sort of an easy religion that you coast through. All of these things are modern day temptations. Even though people may not realize it, they can become tools of Satan like this. Why are God's children hindered? They're hindered because they knowingly get into bad relationships. Bad relationships. You knew that person shouldn't be your best buddy. Not only are they not going to amount to anything, but that person is actively trying to get you to do bad stuff. You know that that is not a good influence on you. You're trying to help them, and they never appreciate it. My friend, you might need new friends, right? You might need new friends. That person is not going to help you get to heaven. Maybe you need to choose somebody else, because once they are tied to you in some way, well, listen to this. 1 Peter 3, verse 7. Husbands, likewise dwell with your wives with understanding. With them, it says, it's referring to the wife. Giving honor to the wife, as unto the weaker vessel, as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. There's that word. How would that hinder my prayer? Because you made a bad relationship. Now, sometimes you can't see that coming. And other times, once you're in it, you wonder, well, what am I going to do? God says, ladies, if you're in that kind of relationship, then you devote yourself to God as a good Christian example. Maybe that'll win him over. Men, if you're in that kind of relationship, then you understand that you're dealing with someone who is made up emotionally different than you. And the influence of your home leadership can cause that person to be drawn to Jesus and can turn that whole home situation into a full Christian household. Because otherwise, every night that you go to God in prayer, that's going to be behind your thoughts. What if I had made different choices in life? What if I had chosen somebody different? Could they have helped me get to heaven? My friends, people are hindered because of bad relationships. Why is the second thing people are hindered by? They're hindered by their own fear. If I become a Christian, then what's that going to mean? Why, if I become a Christian, young people say it means I'll never have any fun in life. It's not true. I believe that Christians have the time of their lives. And I know I can prove it. Jesus said, no man has left mother or father or houses or lands or brothers or sisters, neighbors, anything, possessions in this life, but that they also receive in this life brothers and sisters and mothers and possessions, and in the world to come, eternal life. You can't beat that. There is nothing to fear. You can't lose anything by being a Christian. Not really. Oh, somebody says, I think there's a lot to be left off. Why, those who are outside the church seem to have such a big time with their lives. You don't see. And sometimes we forget the worry and the absolute just awful feelings that the people outside of God's church have every time they lay their heads on the bed at night. Because they know, I don't know what's going to happen to my soul. And I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Y'all remember the story of the talents as you read in Matthew and the other examples, the pounds, depending upon the story you're reading? The one that had one talent, what did he say? He said, I went and hid your talent because I was afraid. Fear will be a huge hindrance to you. And it's almost like it's something outside of you that you can't deal with. But it's really a make-believe hindrance. It's a false wall. It's a paper tiger. You can just burst right through it. You have to gain the courage of Jesus Christ. Exactly what are you afraid of? Some people are afraid of some of the most common things, and there is no shame in that at all. You just have to face the fear and overcome it. I want to talk to you all about that for a moment because it's a big hindrance to people, or they can make it a hindrance. Fear. A young person especially is somebody that says, well, I'm afraid of exactly how you go about this. I was. Maybe you're not, because maybe you're not as awkward or something socially. But I was awkward, and I'm still goofy, but I just don't let it stand in my way anymore. I was afraid. If I go up there and I say I want to be baptized, well, what are they going to do? I don't know where to go. I don't know what they're going to say to me. I don't know what they're going to do to me. Well, it's not so bad. It's actually something that, as long as it's explained, you can dispel those fears. Have you ever noticed people, they'll just look and see, who's going back there? What are they doing back? What's that room look back at? Why don't you go back someday and see what that is up in there? You got some stairs that go right back to a room, and there's some garments. And what it is when you put those garments on, they cover everything. And they're dark blue garments. And you can find ones that fit you. There's ones that fit, taller type people, shorter type people. They're unisex. They fit, anybody of any kind of build and type and length. And so what it is you can take all your regular clothes off so they don't get wet and put those on. And they just zip right up. And then physically what you're doing is somebody's just easing you into the water. Now, different people will tell you different variations. This is basically all you do. You're going to kind of be eased back in the water, and you just kind of bend your knees. And then you just kind of go underneath. And when you come back up. Now, spiritually, what's happening during that time is that they're helping you. They'll make sure that you go under and get back up. You'll feel a hand behind your neck, and you'll feel it kind of press up, and you'll be able to just rise back up. Water's great that way. God knew what He's choosing, didn't He? It's buoyant. It helps you. And I wondered about that when I was younger. I was like, man, if I say I'm going to do this, somebody's going to grab me and work me over or something. What are they going to do to me? Baptism is not a complicated thing. But when you decide you want to do the Lord's will, that's the big thing going on, isn't it? Because the blood of Jesus Christ is cleansing you of all sin when you obey God. And now, Ananias said to Paul, Acts 22, verse 16, why do you tarry? Where's that hindrance? What's holding you back, Paul? Arise, be baptized, wash away thy sins. Well, yeah, but I don't know. Where are you going to take me? What are we going to do? That's not the real problem, is it? Only if you have fear and let it build up and you make it a problem. Because everything's very straightforward, as I just told you. And that's all there is to it. They'll ask you if you believe in Jesus Christ, because there's your confession of faith, and then we know, therefore, you're ready. Because we can't baptize somebody that's not a believer. And then you baptize them into Christ. Now, let's say that somebody has messed up their life, or they feel spiritually weak. Well, you saw an example this morning where people need prayers before God. Sometimes there's something specific they need to work on or confess, and that's fine too. But you might say, there's no way that I could come and let everybody know that I need prayer. It is not a sign of any weakness that anybody here doesn't have. We all have that, don't we? We all have the same weakness. There is nothing that is strange about you, my friend. I need prayer. You need prayer. It's just that sometimes everybody needs to know that we need the prayer, and sometimes everybody needs to know that person does not mean to be a bad Christian example. That person didn't mean to say what they did the other day or do what somebody said they did or be in that place. You see what I mean? And they need to clear the air and make it right. Oh, you want to talk about it being so much better. Once you've cleared things in a public way and you know people are going home and all their prayers are behind you and God appreciates you for your courage, your life is so much better. There is nothing to be afraid of when you come back to God. But fear can be a big, big problem. And we want to dispel that. What is it that is holding you back tonight? Is there any barrier in your life as a Christian, as a child of God, that is getting to where you can't really own the name Christian like you ought to? God says, come back. Come home, sinner, and I'll receive you. God's the God of second chances. He'll help you. Is there someone here tonight that is held back from obeying God to start with? You never have called upon Him and obeyed the gospel just like it says in the Bible, because you really are, well, if you're still learning something, then have the courage. Ask the questions that need to be asked. Dispel your doubts. Gain full confidence that this is what you need to do and this is the life you need to live. Is there somebody, though, that is maybe ready. They've already asked those questions. They've studied on the issue, and they know God is just waiting on them. Well, for you, there's no better time than the present. It's time to throw off the hindrances. It's time to come to the Lord and be owned by Him as His child, as a New Testament Christian. If there's any way we can help you with that tonight, then we want to just assist you in any way we can. God is waiting for you. Jesus is ready to receive you. Won't you come to Him as well?